Long before the United States existed, long before Europeans imagined borders called states, the land now known as Ohio was already one of the most important regions in North America. It was not a wilderness waiting to be settled, nor an empty frontier. It was a living landscape shaped by thousands of years of human presence, memory, belief, and conflict. Rivers carved paths through dense forests and fertile valleys, and along those rivers, generations of people built societies that rose, transformed, and sometimes disappeared, leaving traces that still remain in the earth. The earliest inhabitants of the Ohio region arrived many thousands of years ago, not long after the retreat of the last Ice Age glaciers. These early peoples adapted to a changing environment, hunting large animals at first and later developing more diverse ways of surviving. Over centuries, they learned the rhythms of the land. They followed seasons, understood waterways, and slowly formed patterns of settlement. Their lives were closely tied to nature, and their knowledge of the environment was passed down through generations. By around 1000 BCE, a new and remarkable cultural tradition emerged in the Ohio Valley, known today as the Adena culture. The Adena people were among the first in the region to live in permanent villages and to practice early forms of agriculture alongside hunting and gathering. What makes the Adena culture especially significant is their construction of large earthen mounds. These were not random piles of soil. They were carefully built structures, often used for burials and ceremonies, and they required coordinated labor and shared belief systems. The mounds suggest a society that understood leadership, ritual authority, and the symbolic importance of the land itself. Over time, Adena traditions evolved and gave rise to an even more complex cultural system known as the Hopewell culture, which flourished roughly between 200 BCE and 500 CE. During this period, Ohio became the heart of one of the most extensive cultural networks in prehistoric North America. Hopewell communities were connected by vast trade routes that stretched across the continent. From the Great Lakes came copper. From the Gulf of Mexico came shells. From the Rocky Mountains came obsidian. These materials were not used for everyday survival alone. They were crafted into objects of ritual, art, and ceremony. The Hopewell people also constructed enormous geometric earthworks, perfect circles, squares, and octagons, some spanning hundreds of acres. Many of these were aligned with the movement of the sun, moon, and stars, suggesting deep astronomical knowledge. Ohio was not isolated or primitive. It was a center of intellectual, spiritual, and cultural activity. After around 500 CE, the Hopewell tradition gradually declined. The reasons are still debated. Climate change, social shifts, and changes in trade networks may all have played a role. What is clear is that the region did not become empty. New societies emerged, adapting older traditions to new realities. By around 1000 CE, the Fort Ancient culture developed in southern Ohio. These people relied heavily on agriculture, especially corn, beans, and squash. Their villages were often large and well-organized, sometimes surrounded by defensive walls. Social life was deeply connected to kinship, ritual, and the cycles of planting and harvest. When Europeans eventually arrived in the Ohio Valley centuries later, they encountered Native American nations whose cultures had been shaped by these ancient foundations. Among the most important were the Shawnee, known for their mobility, diplomacy, and resistance. The Miami tribe controlled large areas of western Ohio and played a crucial role in regional trade. The Delaware Lenape, originally from the eastern seaboard, were forced westward by colonial expansion and resettled in Ohio. The Wyandot, Huron, also became influential in the region. Ohio was not governed by a single native nation. It was a shared and contested space. Its rivers made it a crossroads linking the Great Lakes, the Mississippi River, and the eastern forests. Because of this geography, Ohio became a meeting ground where alliances were formed, trade flourished, and conflicts erupted. Native diplomacy was complex and strategic. Treaties, kinship ties, and warfare all played roles in maintaining balance. In the late 1600s and early 1700s, French explorers and traders entered the Ohio Valley. France claimed the region as part of its North American empire, but French control was limited. Rather than settling in large numbers, the French focused on trade, especially furs, and relied heavily on alliances with native nations. For decades, native peoples remained the dominant political and military force in Ohio. European empires competed for influence, but native leaders still controlled the land. This balance began to collapse during the French and Indian War. Britain and France fought for control of North America, drawing native nations into a struggle that was not of their making. When Britain emerged victorious in 1763, France surrendered its claims to Ohio. But British victory did not bring peace. British settlers moved aggressively into native lands, ignoring earlier limits on expansion. Native resistance followed quickly. In 1763, Pontiac of the Odawa helped organize a widespread uprising against British forts across the region. Ohio became one of the main centers of this resistance. Although the uprising was eventually suppressed, it revealed a powerful truth. Native nations were determined to defend their homelands. After the American Revolution, Ohio entered yet another phase of conflict. Britain ceded the region to the United States, despite the fact that native peoples still lived there and had never surrendered it. The new American government viewed Ohio as essential for national growth. Settlement was encouraged. Military campaigns followed. Treaties were signed, broken, and rewritten. Native resistance continued into the late 18th century. A confederation of tribes fought to stop American expansion, winning several early victories. But in 1794, U.S. forces defeated native fighters at the Battle of Fallen Timbers. The Treaty of Greenville forced native nations to give up most of Ohio. Over the following years, remaining native communities were pushed westward through coercion, broken promises, and force. By the time Ohio became a U.S. state in 1803, the land had been transformed. Ancient native centers became towns and farms. Sacred earthworks were destroyed or forgotten. A history that stretched back thousands of years was largely erased from public memory. Yet Ohio before America did not vanish. It remains written into the land itself, in the rivers, the mounds, the place names, and the stories that survive. Understanding Ohio's deep past reveals a truth often ignored. American history did not begin with settlement. It began long before, with native peoples who built, governed, traded, and defended this land for generations. To tell the story of Ohio before America is to acknowledge that this land was not discovered. It was lived on, fought for, and loved, long before it was claimed. If you value careful, thoughtful storytelling about history, stories told without noise, without exaggeration, consider subscribing.